Episode 18, Not Exactly Brotherly Love. Rain was pouring down hard upon Neon City. Roy could hear it pounding down on the roof of his castle, distracting his thoughts. Raindrops rolled down the huge window he was staring out of it, obscuring his vision so that the bright city before him looked like a blur of lights. Roy paced back and forth down the empty corridor, anxiously. The clock that hung above him chimed 12. Larry still wasn't here yet. Roy did not want to meet with his younger brother. He did not want to discuss alliances, or that stuck-up prig Ludwig von Kuppe. What he wanted to do was destroy things. His invasion of Sector 2 was going wonderfully. He did not need help. That older brother of his had been scheming since the time they had been in Cooper Garden, and that sneak Larry had always been his little crony, trying to pick some scraps off the table while Ludwig seized the whole feast for himself. Roy swung around, peering at a painting that hung on the wall, lit by the dim violet torches. It had been painted only 2 years after the fall of Mario, back when he still looked like a teenager and hadn't hit his growth spurt yet. Yup, there he was, crushing a statue of Mario with his feet while Toad Town burned in the background. One of the greatest things about having your own castle was that the pictures in it could show you, and only you. No Ludwig, no Bowser Jr. Not even any of old King Dad. Perhaps one day, Roy thought, that would not be a thing exclusive to this castle.
Prince Roy, sir,"
came a business-like voice from behind him.
"Yeah,"
Roy replied, turning around to see a green Magic Koopa hovering on his broom.
"The Koopa cruiser of Prince Larry is set to land in 15 minutes. It's approaching Neon Castle as we speak."
"Finally!" Roy grunted, pushing past the Magic Koopa and stomping down the hall.
"Thought he'd take all night."
The rain fell on Roy's bald head as he stepped out onto the castle walls, heading towards the landing pad on the roof of the southeastern tower. His heavy feet made a splashing sound as he stepped over the soaked gray bricks. Around him, the skyscrapers of Neon City rose up like a garden of lights. The sky was completely covered in clouds, although Roy could make out one light that was gradually getting closer. His hand tightened into a fist. He had arrived. The rocket engines slowed to a rumble as the Koopa cruiser deployed its landing gear, cruising into a safe landing on the tower. There was a hiss as a hatch in the side opened and, automatically, a boarding ramp extended. Then, without further ado, Prince Larry Koopa left his ship. Prince Larry was large, but perhaps not quite as large as Roy. In fact, if one were to compare him to his father, he'd probably have been a few inches short. Regardless, Larry was still far larger and more powerful than he had been in his youthful Mario fighting days, more than twice the size of a regular Koopa. Larry brushed back a lock of hair from his blue mohawk as he reached the bottom of the ramp, before gazing out of the magnificent city and sighing.
"Neon City!"
he exclaimed, before turning to Roy. He had that same charming expression on his face as he always had. The kind that had always annoyed Roy and didn't look the slightest bit trustworthy.
"Pretty nice place you've got here, Roy."
He grinned.
"How are the casinos? What's the betting scene here like?" "For crying out loud, Larry, I'm not letting you ruin my city!"
Roy roared, stomping his foot and sending up a splash of water. He narrowed his eyes at his brother, who was still smiling at him in that obnoxious way, completely unfazed.
"Are we here to discuss things or not? Because if not, you can leave." "I'm glad to see you're still the Roy I remember,"
Larry replied, walking over and giving him a pat on the shell.
"Why, if your attitude was even slightly good, I'd begin to think you were replaced by an imposter."
Roy growled, moving away from Larry. He was getting wet and cold and had no desire to be out here longer than necessary.
Let's take this inside,
he said, still glaring at his brother.
Oh, of course.
Larry nodded.
Got anything to drink?
Roy didn't bother answering. He just walked back into the castle, relieved to finally be in a place with a heater. Of course, Larry followed him down the hallway.
I'm still in awe of this sick city you've built, Roy,
he blabbered on. Roy was trying to tune him out.
I always thought you were going to end up living in a cave or something, but no, you just go on ahead and build the craziest, coolest city in the Empire. Almost makes me regret the direction I took my own sector.
He chuckled to himself. Roy recalled the day where their father had divided up the world between them. Larry had been given Sector 1, which was composed of Rogueport and the surrounding lands. From what he had heard, visibly the land was much like it had been in the pre-Empire days. However, he had also heard that it was like Larry himself, innocent and unthreatening on the outside, full of deception and deceit on the inside. He had never been there himself and had no desire to go. Roy finally reached the door he had been walking towards. He pushed it open, walking into his private bar. The bar was lit with dim purple lights like most of Neon Castle, and had shiny, reflective black floor and a massive panoramic window looking out over the city. The bar was being manned by a crisp-looking boo with a bow tie, who upon seeing them instantly began the preparation of Roy's favorite drink. It was large enough to comfortably seat 20 people, although there were seldom that many inside. It was called private for a reason.
Now this is what I'm talking about,
Larry exclaimed, gazing around the room as he slowly walked in.
It's almost as good as my own Hooktail Castle nightclub. Shut up,
Roy growled.
I don't wanna hear about what you've got.
He sat down on his favorite seat at a table in the center of the room. The boo flew over towards him was a massive mug full of extremely strong Bob-omb beer. His favorite.
Would you like anything, sir?
The boo asked, floating towards Larry.
Yeah, totally, 1 shooting star martini,
Larry replied quickly.
And put one of those little umbrella things in it too, it makes it look classy.
Roy gripped his hand into a fist and clenched it so hard his claws pricked his skin.
Quit playing around, punk,
he said loudly.
My people aren't being paid to work for you. Just checking out the Neon City culture,
Larry protested with a huge grin on his face, easing into the seat in front of Roy.
What wrong with that? Everything,
Roy hissed.
Now let's get down to business before I punch your stupid face up. What does Mr. Kooky von Koopa want? Our dear brother Ludwig,
Larry exclaimed as the boo brought him a bright blue drink in a tiny martini glass. With the umbrella, as requested.
What else do you think he wants? He wants you to, well, you know, chill a little bit. Maybe ease up on the invasions. And not to go attack the other sectors yet. We don't want to bite off more than we can chew.
Roy had expected this answer, but it still infuriated him. Why did Ludwig think he was in charge? They were adults now, living halfway across the world from each other. Yes, sure, they had met when they had discussed the possibility of overthrowing their father. It had been Ludwig who had convinced him that they actually had a way to win against the combined forces of all their siblings, and the one who had suggested attacking Morton first. But there was no way he was going to play minion to that poofy-haired wimp.
Tell Ludwig to go back pounding on that piano of his,
Roy responded, slamming his fist on the table so that it cracked slightly.
I make the rules around here.
Larry took a tiny sip of his martini.
But you've forgotten something,
Larry replied, giving Roy another infuriating grin.
You may have a lot of brawn, Roy, but you're severely lacking in the brains department. We are going to overthrow an empire that controls the whole world. Together, our alliance only has power over 3/9 of the Kupa Empire. Don't you think we'll be crushed?
Crushed? Tiny wimpy Larry talking about him being crushed? Now that was a joke.
I'm not getting crushed, Larry.
Roy hissed, leaning closer so that Larry's face was reflected in his glasses.
They are. That's just the way it's gonna be. Without Ludwig, you have no strategy.
Larry continued as if Roy had said nothing, the expression on his face never changing.
You have no foolproof way to take out the rest of our siblings. And Pops, of course. You need the brand new airships and weapons that he is creating for our side, and the connections he has in the mushroom world.
Larry laughed, taking another sip of his martini.
Like it or not, Big Bro Ludwig's running the show right now, Roy. You decide to split from him, you split with me. That means you won't get the help of my very own private
Larry League.
You know, my little group of friends that are so good at getting into places they aren't meant to get into and overhearing conversations nobody was supposed to hear. Without that, Roy, you're going to go splat quicker than a sick Goomba.
Roy stood up, anger flowing through him. Larry was right, it was almost like he was trapped. Ludwig had, as he always did, maneuvered him into a position that was impossible to get out of. If he wanted to have even the slightest shot at the throne, he was going to have to take orders from a Koopa who must definitely wanted that same throne for himself. Not able to take it anymore, Roy drew back his leg and quite abruptly kicked his chair as far as he could. It went flying over the bar, smashing into the expensive drinks stored behind it. The rather nervous-looking Boo immediately began to mop the mess up.
Why are you so content with being his little minion, huh?
Roy exclaimed, whirling on Larry and slamming his hands on the table so hard that it shook. Larry was staring at him in such a smug way that if he hadn't have been so keen on this alliance, he would have given him an old-fashioned Roy Koopa beatdown right then and there. Larry shrugged.
You know me,
he replied.
It's too much work being the main man. A guy like me has plenty of opportunities sticking around a guy like Ludwig. Ruling my sector got old years ago. What's the use of all my lovingly crafted talents if I can't ever use them? Just get out,
Roy said darkly, glaring at his brother.
Fine. Tell Ludwig I'll do what he wants. And, make sure you get your spy people to get on it, too.
He began walking to the bar's exit, as Larry calmly sipped his drink. He turned around, standing in the doorframe.
Don't get used to this, punk,
he growled, before slamming the door. Inside the bar, Larry finished his shooting star martini. He leaned back and sighed.
My place does it better,
he decided.